Hi everybody. Man, it is hot out today, even though it's a little overcast. I'm your host, Cameron with Neologic Studios. Thank you so much for joining me. And today, we're gonna be covering some really cool stuff. First off, the Mastering Gauntlet is getting to a close. That's right, our submission deadline is the 28th of August. So if you haven't submitted your mix yet, go ahead to www.themasteringgauntlet.net, submit your song, get ready to have your world rocked, because you can have free mastering, you can have prize drawings from Producer Dojo, Warp Academy, Technophonic, and Sample Hero. We're giving away over $10,000 worth of prizes and free mastering to everybody involved. If your song gets picked, you're gonna be one of the 31 lucky winners of free mastering from not one, but 2 mastering engineers. How cool is that? We recently put together a whole giveaway for the big 4 DAWs that are out there right now that are being used for electronic music production. So Christian and I put together a free mastering chain preset pack for each one of these DAWs. So if you go to the link in the description below, check it out. You can get access to those preset chains for Ableton Live, Cubase, Logic, and FL Studio. But today, I'm gonna walk you through my particular mastering chain, completely rebuilt from the ground up using nothing but stock plugins inside of Cakewalk. And then check the link below. You'll be able to find it on my store. You can get it for free. Alrighty, so to demonstrate today's session, I am going to show you this Sand Remix contest entry by Zack Falls. He did this track super fast and it came out actually really incredible. I was blown away by it. He hit me up last minute before the deadline closed and was like, hey, can you master something for me really quick? It's an emergency. So what I'm going to go through, you guys, here, I'm just going to show you a couple of spots, key spots of the song. So if we zoom in on this, and you can see like we're peaking at, here, I'll just mute it real quick. Not bad. We're peaking at about maybe -12, -10, somewhere around there. And let's get into it real quick. I am going to walk you guys through this chain. So I have these tracks set up for referencing, and they go to my preview bus, which is set up to separate hardware outputs. That way I can't get them mix matched with like trying to accidentally process through my chain. I just want to know where things are at with loudness and EQ spectrum for those references, and then easily toggling back and forth between them. So that's that. The stereo mixes, he sent me a couple different versions. So we landed on this final one. It's Fox 2, or the Remix 2.5. And let me just play this spot for you guys real quick. Very cool, and there's a couple other great spots during the hook where I would like to go and show you guys just what's happening, because again, it's another very high energy part of the track. There's a lot going on, so we don't want to lose any detail. Very cool track. Let me walk you guys through just how I set up this chain to recreate what I was doing with some of my signature chains using third-party plugins. And I blew away even myself at the outcome, because there's some things going on here that my signature chain and the third-party stuff just doesn't do. And so let me just walk through from the very beginning. Let's collapse everything down so you guys can see what's happening here. So very first off, we have our EQ, and all the other presets. You're going to see this very common cut, this dip, right about 7,100 hertz. And this is a wide cue just to feel very natural. Just because I often see a lot of buildup in this frequency range here, especially because a lot of people use loops and samples, as I mentioned before in the Ableton one. And this just helps tame some of that going into the processors, where normally people might end up using de-essers. I notice a lot of mastering engineers will try to tame super high frequency stuff with de-essing to control that. I like to just nip it in the bud very early on. This softens it a little bit going into processors downstream, so I can enhance rather than have to correct with all of the stuff that's going on after this. And then I just wanted a subtle emphasis bump, and this template's going to be set up to do that. But the other thing, I've already set it up for, if you notice, my frequency for the low pass, or excuse me, the high pass is at 20 hertz with a 12 dB per octave slope. That's pretty typical. It's pretty conservative, actually, because you notice there's a lot of info down there, especially when you're dealing with a lot of synths, where they can put out subharmonic frequencies that reach well into 10 hertz. I've seen this on some Virtual Riots tracks where they reach super low. And if you're not careful, that stuff can start to eat up valuable headroom, but some people are able to do that and still get a great master. It's because they've set up their mix structure really well. And so those are the two things going on with my pre-EQ. So that's the very first stage. And then we go into a limiter. Now in the Ableton pack, I called this the softener, or basically what I'm trying to do is find any spurious peaks, like these loudest portions here are going to maybe trip a little bit too much of the processors downstream. If we're looking at the compressor, the soft tube fed compressor, or the stuff that I have going on down there, where they're trying to do their thing, but if they're receiving too hot of a transient, too loud of a signal, what I'm trying to do is just tame that here and then feed it some output. I'm nominalizing the level here. Think of this as your utility gain output to start feeding the rest of the stuff downstream. So then next we go into our compressor, the standard PCA 4K S-type compressor. I have a little bit of a high pass going on. I want to say it was about 90 hertz. Anyway, you mess with the threshold just to try to get it to start kissing the peaks ever so slightly. So let me play it really quick and I'll show you what's happening back there. I'll just keep it muted for now. But you can see it's working ever so slightly. And again, let me walk you guys through what's happening here as we play through the song. You can see the frequency boosts and cuts. And then we go into the concrete limiter. There's really nothing that it's catching. What I'm trying to do is just feed it level. Now this is actually adding a little bit of character because just passing it through is doing something. I'm noticing, just hearing a difference. And then if we look at the compressor here, we're maybe getting 1 to 2 dB of compression going on at a 4:1 ratio, which is actually on the more aggressive side for mastering, but it does a good lift to the track. And then if we go into the effects chain here, we're using the Cakewalk linear phase multiband tool. And you can see I've done quite a bit of sculpting here. So this is the first stage of major sculpting. My biggest focus for this track, I obviously pushed the low end quite a bit. And we're looking between 100 and 700 hertz. So there's our crossover point, 851. And then we look, so these crossover points that I'm picking are on purpose. They're to dial in certain tonality frequency ranges. So this one down here, I'm focusing on just capturing that thump from the kick. And then we start getting into, in this particular track, he had a lot of really wide stereo pads. And they were taking up a lot of the power zones. So I'm doing a little bit of compression and then I'm doing some makeup gain overall to see where I can bring back that and just leveling out the experience to give a more consistent range out of that. And then the same thing is going on for the upper harmonics, the upper mids here between 1,000 and 5,000 hertz, which is a very critical spot for the human hearing. And then just taming some sibilants off the high end, and our ultra highs are where you see a lot of bias stuff coming between 10 and 20 kilohertz from tape saturators, that kind of stuff. There's a lot of overtone stuff there. So next in the chain, we have our soft tube FET compressor, and you can see it's moving ever so slightly, just doing a little bit of gentle kissing on the track to do some very sensual compression. We're talking more for character. We're adding tonality to it because of the way that I'm doing a moderate attack and a somewhat fast release. That's helping balance out, just it just sounds very pleasing. One of the things that I kind of miss about my other mastering chain is I could dial these in with millisecond sample accuracy to the point where I could enter in, like I showed in the Ableton Live tutorial. Let's say we're working at 128 beats per minute. I can go in and find musical values between those to set for my attack and release times, which gives a lot of benefit. But as long as you know how to tune this by ear, you just have to know what to listen for. And that's for when you start to be too fast of compression, too fast of release, you can hear the sucking and sucking sound of it letting go and pulling on the signal in an unpleasant way. You hear the artifacts of compression. So moving on, we go to the next effects chain, and that's where we have the Sonitis equalizer. And as much as everybody complains about the old GUI, this thing hasn't been updated in forever. These plugins sound really clean, really transparent, so you can do a lot of EQ work. I'm doing some more broad sculpting here just after the post dynamics chain, and you can tell there's a couple of things going on. 52 Hertz, just a rough, like super tiny cut. But then about 600 Hertz, we're dipping about 1.5, and that's just what this track needed. Then we go into 3500 Hertz. These are very typical presence bumps, and you guys can shift those as needed, but those are great starting points. And the same thing that is happening right about 10K, we're dipping about 1.9. And then we go back to another stage of the linear phase multiband. Now this one is treating more for transparency than anything else. So if I play this for you, let me move back a little bit. We can start to see it working on the signal. We're doing just ever so slight taming of the signal. So you can see here, we're not doing much of anything at all. Some of these aren't doing anything at all. But for the most part, it's there to catch. So if you think of the other one doing most of the tonal shaping, the very first step, what we're doing here is trying to just catch. So we're pitching into this plugin, this one's catching it. And this one's trying to catch just any more final things that need broad shaping or sculpting here in the mix. And the reason I've done this is in different crossover points is because typically what will happen when you start stacking crossover points at the exact same spot is you start to notice the effects of comb filtering. And so that's this dip right here, this crossover point where you notice that it's not catching anything. Our previous one was between 90 and 100 Hertz because we're just trying to catch that thump for the kick way down here. By the time we get to 90 or 100 Hertz, our crossover point here, I want to capture a little bit more of that sub energy that's happening in the overtones for the sub. And then by the time we get to the mid-range here, I'm trying to focus in on muddiness and power issues that are going on in the mix that can cause it to come out of balance. We're just catching every little tiny peak. It's subtle, subtle shifts. And then finally, we're hopping to the last section of the chain, just some more gentle limiting. So this is barely doing a dB or so of limiting before we hit the concrete limiter. Now the concrete limiter on this output, I have the bass in. And then right now what it's doing is it's providing a pretty prominent bump. So if I go back and play that for you. So let's watch this bump down here. Take a look at when the kick is hitting. You can see it hitting down there, pretty low. Now let me go into that master chain again while you watch this on. I'm gonna flip this out. Already you can see a pretty noticeable dip from 100 Hertz all the way on down. That is a significant amount of lift, and we're gonna watch it jump right back up. Now look how much higher it is. We're getting this slight smiley face curve. That's the nice curve that we're looking for, this contour, and that's what we're looking for. But the lift, the way that it's doing in mastering at the very final limiting stage is just sounding very pleasant, adding a lot of color and character to the track, almost like a soft clipper. And with this low end emphasis added in, it just kissed the track ever so nicely. All right, folks, so there you have it. There is the walkthrough of my mastering chain. in Cakewalk using nothing but stock plugins. And a huge shout out to Zack Falls. Man, this guy has been killing it with all of the singles that he's been putting out. I was just super impressed by his production with Hourglass, this remix for San Holo Remix Contest. In fact, this chain is the exact same setup that I used to master the actual song that we submitted. So if you don't get a chance, go to the link in the description below and vote for his remix on the San Holo Remix Contest. Show some love to that guy because he's doing incredible work. And let me know what you guys are struggling with in your productions, what it is that you want to learn most about mastering, because as we go into the Mastering Gauntlet, those are the questions that I'm going to try to answer as I do the challenges each day with every song that we get submitted. So if you haven't submitted yet, again, go to the Mastering Gauntlet website, follow the mix prep guide, enter your information, and then share a Dropbox link to your mix. Make sure it's a WAV file, and the highest resolution that you submit is the highest resolution that we'll work with. So keep in mind, as you submit, it'll take you to another page. You can enter all the entries for the giveaway portion of the contest separately. I'm sorry it has to be a two-step thing because just the way the legal stuff is set up and the way that this whole platform is set up to allow us to do it. But you'll have every bonus entry gives you another ticket to the prize drawing. So how cool is that? If you can get more tickets, more power to you. That just ups your chances to win. So again, if you have any questions, go to my website, neologicstudios.com. Give me some questions. I'll answer them as soon as I can. Let me know what you guys want to see in the next video, and have a good day. Bye, guys. Like I'm trapped in this hourglass. Think that you can never show me.